Well, everyone, the iPhone 11 has been out for 5 years now, and I wanted to go and kind of take a look at this thing, how it's been holding up since late 2019, or see how it's holding up in late 2024, since basically late 2019, 5 years later. Now, the first thing I'll definitely tell you is, since the iPhone 16s have came out, I've compared this display with it, and this display definitely has aged. It's 6.1 inches, so the same size as the iPhone 16, but this IPS panel definitely isn't that great. It doesn't get the brightest either. I mean, it's not the best looking panel of all time, but it still looks okay, right? You have the notch up top, a little bit of bezel around it, and I actually have not put a screen protector or case on this phone since I bought it, and you can kind of see like it's still in like pretty good condition. It's actually not holding up that bad, which is surprising. The build quality is also very similar to something like the iPhone 16, except you're not getting frosted glass back, you're just getting a standard glass back, which still looks pretty good. Getting the dual camera setup up here, wireless charging. This was the last iPhone to not have MagSafe capability, since this iPhone, every single iPhone has had it, and you're getting lightning on the bottom. Some areas where this phone definitely hasn't aged that well is definitely with USB Type-C. I love having USB-C, this iPhone is missing out on it. But other than that, it still feels like a pretty good phone, right? It doesn't feel that bad. Now, I would also add with the camera side, I definitely do like having a camera like this, right? It's definitely not a terrible camera. So this thing is basically giving you 5x zoom, which isn't as much as the iPhone 16s, but it was the same as about an iPhone 14, and you're getting 0.5x zoom here. I would say the biggest reason and the biggest flop, I would say, of this camera in this day and age is the lack of things like cinematic mode. I love having cinematic mode, and you're not getting it on here. But I would still say this camera still holds up pretty decent. It's not terrible, but definitely it's a little bit grainy. It's definitely not the nicest camera of all time. And the things that it misses, like cinematic mode, which is like one of the few features Apple's added, I kind of do, appreciate, the newer phones having it. I don't really like the iPhone 11 for not having it, in my personal opinion. Now, with the display itself and turning it on, it still is holding up well on iOS 18. So even though this thing had the Apple A13 Bionic chip with 4 gigabytes of RAM, it's an older chipset. It doesn't have, it's like half the amount of RAM as the iPhone 16. I still find this iPhone to still be performing at like pretty decent levels, right? It's definitely not terrible. And I do think if you're going to go and pick up an iPhone for like a pretty budget iPhone, this thing was like what, $699 when it first came out. For a budget iPhone in today's day and age, I think this thing holds up like decently well. It's still getting software updates. I think on iOS 18 it's been glitchy, but it hasn't been terrible. But I guess the performance is the one area where I look at this phone and I'm kind of like not the biggest fan of. If you're trying to go through and like play big games, or if you're trying to even compare this thing against an iPhone 14, you'll notice all these random glitches and all these random like stutters. And that is the one area where I look at this phone and I feel like, this is where this phone ages in. When you're going through and like, even playing some basic games like this, sometimes you'll see some random stutters, which is not a big deal, but that's the one area you're going to kind of notice it. Otherwise though, I think the performance of this phone is what you'd expect from a 5-year-old phone, and actually I think it's better than what you'd expect from a 5-year-old phone. The fact that this thing is still on, the current version of software, and the fact that we're on iOS 18.1 right now and it's still holding up this well is actually very surprising. I would say the worst area of this phone right now, especially having it been on iOS 18 for a while, is battery life. I'm going to be running another battery comparison today, but I can definitely tell you in my personal opinion, the battery life on this phone definitely isn't that great, and that is probably the one area of this phone that's pretty much not holding up that well when it comes down to it. So from that side, that kind of covers up the iPhone 11. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.